Before I get this review started, I think I should clear up some things about my movie reviews. Specifically, my rating scale. For example, me giving a film a 70% isn't really equivalent to everyone else's interpretation of a 7 out of 10. I guess you could say I grade these things like an English essay paper. Films aren't easy to make and it takes a lot of time, money, and effort just to put one out. There are people who dedicate their lives into these things, who pour their heart and soul into something they're passionate about. This art that we call film takes dedication, and you have to give them respect for the people out there following their dreams. I'm not gonna give a film a 20% even though most people would say said film is a 2 out of 10, because I don't want to bash these people's efforts. I stick to the idea that 90% and above is an A, 80 is a B, 70 is a C, and so on and so forth. So the worst I'd probably give a film I absolutely detest would probably be a 50%, which is an F in the usual grading system. You could say I grade high or that I rate in an Asian's grading scale, but when someone says a 5 out of 10 is an average or decent film, that's when I have to make it clear that my 50% is not the same as someone else's 5 out of 10. Besides, it's not really the rating that matters, it's more the review. So from now on, I'll be adding a tagline with the percentages I give for my reviews. 90 and above is great, 80 and above is good but could use some polishing, 70 and above is decent but really needs improvement, 60 and above is unsatisfying, and below that is just, well, rest in peace. If it's a minus or plus, take a 90% for example, which is an A minus, I'd probably say it's in between good and great or something like that. Anyways, time for the movie review. So while I was doing research for my Daredevil versus Daredevil video, I had to take a closer look at the 2003 film and really find some interesting key points. But what really surprised me the most was how my opinion really changed the second time I saw it. I gotta be honest with you, when this movie first came out, I really liked it. And I mean really liked it, like almost loving it. Bear in mind I was literally 3 years old. But in rewatching the film, there were some things that I didn't appreciate as much before that I do now, and there were just some things that I felt were exactly the other way around. Oh yeah, and spoiler warning for a 13-year-old movie. So Daredevil is a film about Matthew Murdock, a blind lawyer turned superhero, who was blinded by a chemical accident when he was a kid. Now that he's all grown up, he's seeking vengeance for his father. The plot is okay, but nothing too special. It's really just getting from point A to point B. Firstly, Ben Affleck did a phenomenal job as Daredevil. This film gets a lot of crap thrown at it, especially the actors, but even more specifically Ben Affleck. Say what you want about the campiness or the script of the film, but Ben Affleck gave it his all in what he was given, and he's really the shining point of this movie. Though I find it a little bit, I don't want to say off, but interesting on the choices he made with his facial expressions in certain scenes. Like there's this one part in the film where Electra unmasks him on a rooftop, and he has that face of having just felt the biggest relief known to man. I don't know why, but I found that really funny. Another outstanding performance was by Michael Clarke Duncan. Rest in peace, by the way. The guy was a very talented actor. There were times where I felt that he made the script even better than it was intended just from the pure charisma he added to the role. I'll get more into the characters later, but one more person I want to commend was David Keith as Jack Murdock. He doesn't have a lot of screen time when compared to Ben Affleck, but the plot makes his presence palpable throughout the whole runtime. He did an amazing job setting up that role model idealistic dad that every kid looks up to. And Foggy Nelson did crack jokes for comedic relief, but other than that, he wasn't given much character. So now getting to the cons. Most of the characters in general were undeveloped. Daredevil himself was probably the only one fleshed out in this, which isn't saying much since literally every character here is one-dimensional. The only reason why I felt that Wilson Fisk was likable was just because Michael Clarke Duncan was cast as him. His pure charisma carried the whole character for me. If anyone else played him, the role wouldn't be anywhere near as memorable because the character Wilson Fisk himself is barely even fleshed out. In one of the scenes, Daredevil asks the same question the audience was wondering to Fisk as to why he's doing all these terrible things. His response is just plainly business. So Fisk in this film is basically someone who wants power and wreaks havoc just for money. And we are given no backstory or really anything that we as the general audience could relate to. Sounds like your everyday cookie cutter villain to me. There's a whole subplot involving Ben Urich, which doesn't really go anywhere. I mean, he goes on a journey to find out who Daredevil truly is, and when he does find out that Matthew Murdock is indeed the masked man, he writes a story about it, only to delete it a few moments later. I mean, I guess you could say that his character went full circle by wanting to reveal Daredevil's secret identity, but then just changed his mind because of the goodness of his heart. But I just never really felt any weight to that whole side story. Other than the fact that it gave them a reason to have a cool ending narration, it seemed forced. The idea was definitely there, but the execution was just not on par. The action scene in the bar, however, was executed brilliantly. I would have done less with the radar sense as it kind of made my head hurt at times, but the scene was overall really well choreographed. It was fast-paced, action-packed, a few flips here and there, and overall badass. The two other villains, Electra and Bullseye, really had no chance to shine in this movie. Let's start with the better of the two, if you could call it that. Jennifer Garner as Electra basically had nothing to work with here. Her character really has no significance in the film because her purpose just serves as a love interest of Matthew Murdock. Their relationship did feel organic, but there was no build-up. Electra just enters the cafe and Matthew Murdock, a blind man, is physically attracted to her. How even does that work? What? Granted, maybe you could say he was attracted to her smell, but I actually really don't want to go into this that much. Jennifer Garner delivered some lines of dialogue really well, but a few really just didn't land how they were supposed to.
I didn't kill your father!
Liar!
And though they gave us a reason to care about her, when she finally dies, I didn't really feel the impact of the loss. I was more in the line of, well, that happened. Wait, didn't the Psy go through her upper back? Why is the open wound on her lower back now? Colin Farrell as Bullseye is just...
Why?
Don't know who thought of the costume for this guy, but I'll say it right now. That was almost, if not as bad as the bat nipples.
Bullseye.
Really on the nose on that one, aren't you? Seriously, that Bullseye logo on his head is just... that looks terrible. I haven't seen Farrell in any other movies, and I'm sure he's a fine actor now, but this was just not his best work. His acting is just way too over the top, even for this super campy film. I mean, here are just a few examples. I read somewhere in one of his interviews that he chose to intentionally act over the top and exaggerate his facial expressions to mirror the comic book counterpart. And in that case, I'm sorry, dude. Some things just don't transfer well into live action. I also found his accent to be thinning out at some points of the film, which is weird because he literally uses his original hometown accent in which he grew up speaking with. That's probably due to the overuse of the low, deep whispers throughout this film.
I told him I'd do you for free. The devil is mine.
You took away my hands. Show mercy.
Like I said before, the bar scene was fantastic, but the other action pieces were a little absurd. Specifically the playground fight scene between Daredevil and Electra, that was just straight up cringe. Nothing really to add on to that. The church battle between Bullseye and Daredevil was pretty entertaining, but in the ridiculous way, and also nonsensical. There's a part where Daredevil falls from the top, or not even the top of the church actually, and then he has time to grapple onto something before he hits the ground. I don't know, that just took me out of it since he should have fell a lot faster than that. The ending battle with Kingpin was really anticlimactic. The gist of it is that water is Kingpin's kryptonite, Murdock lays a 7-hit combo, Kingpin goes down. Now let's talk about the tone of the movie. It starts off really dark and gritty when we are shown that Murdock is weeping over his dead father. It continues with a pretty badass fight, but that's when everything changes. After that bar fight, we see an almost child's play cartoony battle in the playground, and then it switches to a sort of serious, sort of not feel with Kingpin, and then we cut to a live action Looney Tune character coming to life, and then we go back to some serious drama between Daredevil and Electra. It's just that the film seems like it's trying to appeal to both the adult audience through the serious stuff, and appeal to the younger audience with the cartoon nonsense, that it forgets that meeting in the middle is the most important part of that whole idea. If you try mixing two polar opposite tones together, it will blow up in your face. You can have the serious tone while still having kids enjoy the comedic lighthearted stuff, but as long as it's not too over the top. Because if it is, then it interrupts the flow of the movie. The pacing of the film is heavily affected by this, and then it really takes the audience out of it. When it comes down to it, 2003's Daredevil does have some redeeming qualities aside from the several faults the film has. Ben Affleck's, David Keith's, and most especially Michael Clarke Duncan's performance really carried this film, and so did the bar fight sequence. Jennifer Garner gives it her all with the role she is given, but a few scenes just did not work in her favor. Oh yeah, and Colin Farrell basically plays a cartoon character. So I'd have to say it's almost borderline decent, but not quite satisfying. I'm gonna give 2003's Daredevil a 69%. I'm thinking of doing more reviews like these for older movies like the original Spider-Man trilogy, Ghost Rider series, and the earlier Fantastic Four films, or maybe even the new Fantastic Four film. This is because school is probably just gonna stockpile loads of work on me and I won't have time to do all these researched videos. So thank you everyone for watching, you all are the best. Please show your support by hitting that like and subscribe button. Also, consider following me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And for more of my content, just click right here.